Yes.
How are you doing?
I've had the best day.
Yes.
I've had the best day.
Me too, yes.
And you saw it happen.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't a cultural idea, it was a cultural experience. If you weren't there, you would not know about it. In fact, I can't explain to the group what happened, so I'm not going to try. But it did raise to the surface the issue of culture. It was amplified so much. And so we want to talk about safety culture and culture.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Rob, would you, we are in the beautiful city of Chennai.
Chennai, yeah.
And we've been here for the last 4 or 5 days. Amazing symbolism. We've been visiting temples, churches, we've been talking to a lot of people.
And training rooms and...
Yes, and trying to understand this whole notion of safety and culture and safety culture in the maritime world. And I know you've had many aha moments, and so have I, just seeing it through your eyes. I would like you to help me understand, Rob, what's your view on this whole idea of safety culture?
Okay, I just want to take one step back. I think I need to tell my story about how I came into the understanding of culture that I have. And some of it's connected to anthropology, in which you're an expert. But I actually discovered what culture was about through religion. And not just my own personal experiences in my own life, but also in my studies. And I haven't read any good expert analysis that concerns culture that does not discuss all of the component parts of religion. So, symbolism, ritual, gesture, language, semiotics, metaphysical ideas, and so on, right? These are all essential to understanding culture. Safety culture is no different. If it's the culture of the safety industry, then why is nobody even discussing, even slightly, these things which in an anthropological sense, a sociological sense, or in a religious sense, are considered foundational? So here we are in India, right? Even in my motel room where I'm staying, and it's not really an Indian motel, it's really an American chain motel, at the end of each hallway is religious symbols. Beside the lift well is religious symbols. You walk into the restaurant, it's religious symbols, mandalas, candles, shapes, gods, and so on, right? And here we are walking past these things all day, and yet in the safety world, we're told through silences, that this is not a part of safety culture. And so what we end up with most discussions of safety culture is some strange behaviourist cognitive propositional idea that safety culture is about A, B, C and D. It's mostly conceptual stuff. It's not experiential and it's not phenomenological. So when you ask me about safety culture, one of the first things I would say is the best way to understand what the nature of a industry of safety is in its culture is the very things that are never spoken about, but they are obvious and present. What are the mythologies of safety? What are the rituals of safety? What is the semiotics of safety? What is the language of safety? If we start asking those questions, we might get closer to the idea of what safety culture is. I would go close to 99% of nearly everything I've seen that is branded safety culture is not. It's systems. You're reading about the culture of systems, not about safety culture. And it's not just about religion. There are many things associated with mythology, ritual, gesture, and so on that are never discussed. But what we're really focusing on is systems. And systems are a part of culture, but a very small part of culture. Structure is a very small part of culture. You only have to drive on the roads of Chennai to realise that structure has been thrown out the window, and that everyone on the road is not driving to a structure, they're driving to intuitive knowledge, and they have a ritual about it. Most of the people have got a god on their dashboard.
How do you explain that, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I can explain it because my understanding, understanding of culture doesn't exclude things like faith and mythology. But you show me one book anywhere in safety across the world that includes that in its understanding of the industry and safety and its culture. It's not there.
Fascinating. Yes, you're right, Rob. You brought in a lot of words. You use the word silences. Yeah. Can you, just for the layperson, and also use the word phenomenology, right? For a layperson, would you like to explain what does silence mean?
It's really interesting. Mary Douglas, who is a global expert on culture, probably one of the greatest anthropologists of all time, she talks about purity and taboo. And taboo is really important in understanding culture. So, for example, in Indian culture, what are the taboos? What are the silences? Yeah. And then if you come in an Australian context, what are the taboos? Well, a funny taboo in Australian culture is don't talk about religion. If you go to a party, don't talk about religion, it'll divide the party. Here we are in India, if I talk about religion, it's like talking about eating. It's just a common way. And by the way, in Indian eating, the ritual, the gesture, the symbolism is enormous. Yeah. So silences are about taboos, and safety has many of them. Safety never talks about faith. Safety never talks about fallibility. And I could list them all. So these are the taboos, these are the silences. But the trouble is, silences allow the amplification of things that actually don't matter. And so what we end up with, people running all over the place talking about culture safety, and it's really systems. And they're amplifying that, safety is all about structures and systems, which means they're not only silent about what matters, they're also blind to it.
Correct. And I think in one way what you're saying, you use the system many times, and there is a view on systems. There's one view of system which is ecosystems.
Yes.
But I think what you're referring to is something different here.
Yes.
Would you like to talk about what you mean when you use the word systems?
Well, it's more like ecosystems, like you say, but I don't even talk about ecosystems because there's a sense in which cultures have a life of their own. And by that I mean they have an energy and a force that can't be explained propositionally. And so I went for a walk on the streets of Chennai this morning, and no amount of propositional description, you could write a book or 100 pages on it, it won't equate to walking 100 metres and trying to cross the road. You can't.
Correct.
This is phenomenology, the phenomenon of being.
Correct.
Okay. Way too much stuff that's written on safety culture is about brain centrism. It's about cognitive, rational sense making. Now, it's not that that's not important. It's just that it's only partial. It's only a small section of what culture's about.
Correct.
And this is one of the problems we have in the Western world itself,
yes,
where lots of safety's driven. United States, England, Australia, very much caught up in cognitive systems.
Absolutely, and this is where the idea of safety culture becomes a little bit difficult to grasp, because what it says is that if you cannot measure it, forget it. This is not important.
Yeah.
What you are suggesting, Rob, is if you cannot measure it, that's good.
Yes.
But don't even try it.
No, don't try it.
So that
you cannot apply measures to culture.
Correct.
And this is the problem with people who talk about safety culture as if, but some say safety culture can't be measured, but they then they can't go the next step and say, okay, let's have a look at all the things that can't be measured. So with that description is safety culture is only about the things we measure, again, it limits and constrains the conversation about what culture is. Because now we must not pay attention or listen to anything outside of the constraint, which is why religion is taboo, or the language of faith is taboo in any discussion on safety culture. And yet, the absurdity is astounding. The very nature of risk. What is risk about? It's about uncertainty. What is daily action in risk about? It's about a leap of faith into what I don't know. And I don't care whether your risk assessment is 2 pages or 200 pages. You can put that risk assessment down. The very next action you take is an act of faith. You don't know. But we've got an industry that makes the word faith taboo. Crazy. So it's not about culture. No matter how many systems you create, the person who's out in the field, in the greatest of risks, in the greatest of dangers, is not using rational decision making for what they do. They're using heuristics and unconscious embodied knowing for what they do.
Yes.
The addiction to risk assessments makes us think that cultural decision making is rational. It is not. And then when something goes wrong, rather than look at how the decisions really were made, we go back to a piece of paper and we use that to examine why it went wrong.
Absolutely. And there's some really good, so if you want to take this, so there's 2 questions here, Rob. One is a very practical question on, so because you started with the idea of religion.
Yeah.
I would like to, first of all, understand from you, give me a few examples that connect religion with safety culture. Just concrete examples so people know what we are talking about.
Okay. There are hundreds.
Yeah, I know.
Let's just go to the safety moment or the safety minute or the safety prayer or the safety ritual in any organisation that has adopted this methodology, right? So it's a 5-minute, 10-minute. We've got a group of executives around the room. They feel like someone has to say something about safety before they start their meeting. Okay, can anyone offer a safety share or a safety word, right? And what actually happens is, when companies put this in, they now can't take it out because the ritual is then made sacred. It's then sacralized. So it's like if you put 0 in an organisation and you suggest you now take it out. It's like you're now entered into territory of taboo. But most organisations I know who have adopted the safety minute or the safety moment then ritualise it and then they sacralise it, right? So it's made sacred. Then when it becomes meaningless, we've got all these people around a table trying to think of something to say, so they start talking nonsense because something has to fill the air space. And so people talk about silly, petty things in these safety moments, and there's no difference between that ritual and any other ritual in any other cult or cultic or culture where we end up with ritual chants or ritual counting or mantras. And so the safety minute becomes a mantra. And in the end, no one knows how to get rid of it because we've sacralized it. So how's that for an example?
Yeah, very good example, Rob, and something I have also noticed. Can you help me understand the term sacralize? What does that mean?
I'm making something sacred. So when we make something sacred, we elevate it into a metaphysical space. We give it force beyond its physical being. And you can do that with a football team, right? So, all of a sudden I'm cheering for my football team, Manchester United. But there are many fans move beyond just cheering for a team, right? It now elevates to something sacred. So the belonging and attachment they get to Manchester United becomes much, much more than just being a fan, right? We start moving into the territory of gods. We start moving into the territory of metaphysical belief, right? I not only believe in my football team, I believe in it religiously. I have commitments to it. I buy their shirt, I buy their t-shirt, I put the t-shirt above my bed. I have the poster of the best players in my lounge room. I have someone who has it when you ring the doorbell to their house. It plays the team song. It then begins to be more than itself.
Yes.
A bit like in Star Wars. We have this invisible force that controls things.
Correct.
Now Jung calls that archetypes, invisible forces that have a life unto themselves. That's what the sacred is. We move it beyond its physical presence, and it now takes on a metaphysical presence because it involves belief and faith, and we move from the rational to now things which are very much emotional, spiritual, etc. And it can happen in simple things like songs. So, we move into that medical thing the moment we sing music about heart and soul.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking, Rob, as you're speaking, is that because it goes into your belief, it goes into your religion, this whole idea of whether you call it zero accidents or safety movement, as soon as when reality hits you, when there is an incident or an accident, there is nothing to rationalize, right? The default is to go back and blame that person, is to bully that person, because
back in mind one,
which we will talk about in a future podcast. But the whole idea is that there is no thinking involved then.
No.
The default or the instinct or the intuition is to straight go and scapegoat someone.
Yeah.
And I think that is very, very powerful. And that is what we don't realize when we talk about safety culture, that there is unless we recognize the unconscious, the deeper belief,
absolutely,
we will, and which is symbolic of the term culture.
And it's not systems.
No, it's not systems. Isn't it amazing, Rob?
Yeah. Remember last night we were watching the TV, and it was the Indian Premier League, and the Indian Premier League is owned by Disney, right?
Yes.
And every 10 minutes up pops, you're watching the Indian Premier League, believe. Now, that's how sport turns into a religion. And the word is believe. It doesn't say anything else.
No.
Believe. Believe is the mantra. I think safety is exactly the same. So, for example, if you go to the conference where the global safety world adopted zero, the mantra was just believe.
Yes. And now just bringing it to end, Rob, because I think one of the things you said was that once something becomes religious, then there is no rationality involved in it.
Yeah, correct.
And when you listen to for example, you're doing an accident investigation, what you are concerned with is, for example, why did this accident happen? And you go into rational models like 5Y and tripod and so on. And what you're saying is so fascinating, because your models are not, your methods, your models, your ontology is not really geared to understand the reason or why the accident happened.
Yes.
Yeah, it falls short of any kind of understanding.
It falls short by miles. When I do an accident investigation, I start to look at what were the rituals that were believed in, what kinds of mantras and acts of faith are common in this company, and they're so common they're unquestioned and never discussed. What things in this company are taboo and never spoken about? What things have been made sacred? I mean, you can make a risk assessment sacred. I go into companies that have the silly risk matrix square with green, yellow and all those sorts of colours, and I sometimes say, good, take that out of your risk assessment, get rid of it. Oh no, we can't do that. And the moment you can't take something out, it's been made sacred. And yet it has no contribution at all to the incident investigation, none.
Well, in fact, quite the opposite, because what we see is that you do a risk assessment and you become so overconfident that when the reality hits, you have no idea, because you're not critical in your thinking, you're not mindful.
Correct.
Because you've already, in your unconscious, you strongly believe that you have already ticked all the boxes.
Correct. That's right. And someone like Greg Smith says that coloured box is his go-to in a prosecution. He starts with your belief in that box, and that is a faith belief. That box makes no difference to how a risk is managed or tackled.
And just to summarize this discussion, wonderful discussion, Rob. I think from what I'm hearing, it is so important to talk about religion, mythology, the symbols, semiotics, understand whatever lies in the unconscious.
Yeah, correct.
Because that's where most decisions are made from.
Yeah, that's right.
Even if you don't make an attempt to understand that, you're just caught in this rational space, which even the latest neuroscience completely rejects.
Oh yeah,
Very few decisions are made from this space.
Oh yeah, maybe 1%.
Yeah, fascinating, Rob. And this is why the idea of safety culture and linking safety culture with religion is so important.
Yes,
and
any discussion of culture. I don't care whether it's business culture, I don't care whether it's sport culture, safety culture,
course.
I don't care. If you're leaving these things out, then you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're not really looking at culture.
And the way to do that, Rob, as I've understood in this journey, is by having conversations.
Oh yeah.
Because only through those conversations where you don't have an agenda,
yes,
people will tell you something that they don't even know. It only emerges from the unconscious to the
and
conscious.
they're doing
mind.
it unconsciously. Yes, they're not aware of it. Yeah.
Is there anything else, Rob?
No,
you'd
no,
like
no,
to
no.
say?
That's fine. I think we've had enough.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Yeah,
Thank you, Rob. It's good.
Pleasure.
Very
And
enjoyable.
here we are.
Yes. Thank you.